At the beginning of the story, we see a beautiful and advanced city. It looks very prosperous and technologically developed city. Meanwhile, someone is telling the story about how dungeons started appearing in the world. The narrator of this tale is the hero of our story. He says that there was no definite record about the origin of dungeons or the time they first appeared on Earth, but it was common knowledge that they were abundant in two things: precious resources and life-threatening dangers. As the protagonist is telling the story, a group of miners are entering the dungeon and one miner is coming out with a cart loaded with minerals. Their foreman tells them to hurry up and stop talking. The protagonist tells about the monsters that inhabit the dungeons when they first appear. They were handled by the players. The players were humans that developed or awakened supernatural abilities to fight the monsters. They could use magic also and were sent to any dungeon that opened up to kill the monsters before the resources could be mined out. But our protagonist is not a player but only a miner. His name is Jian Mingyu and he works the tough job of mining because it paid well. The workload was excessive and it was physically straining, but that also helped to develop one's strength and physique. Mingyu is quite well built and proud of it. The foreman comes behind him and smacks him, saying that he should be more attentive to his surroundings. The foreman named Lao Fan was shouting at him for some time, but Mingyu was busy in his thoughts. Lao Fan did not want to come into the dungeon, but he had a reason. It was payday and he was there to hand over Mingyu's pay to him. The protagonist gets really happy on getting his pay and starts counting it. He refuses to treat his foreman to drinks after work as he was saving money for something special. He needed to gather more money so that he could buy an awakening stone to turn him into a player. Lao Fan already knew this and warns him against buying an awakening stone. He tells him that even the lowest rank awakening stone could cost thousands and there was also the risk of dying while fighting the monsters. Lao Fan tells Mingyu the story of his nephew who wanted to be a player and pestered his parents for it. When they pooled their savings together to make him a player, he turned out to be a coward. He only set foot in a dungeon once and got so scared that he never returned again. As they talk about this, the core of the dungeon is shown near the place where the miners are working. The awakening stone was in reality the core of a dungeon. It was the most valuable thing in the dungeon and it was beyond the reach of normal people. When someone used a dungeon core as an awakening stone, they became a player and received one of the three classes: warrior, ranger, or mage. The awakening stones were the possessions of the guilds that managed the dungeons and they sold even E-rank stones at a high price. But Mingyu is determined to become a hunter. He tells Lao Fan, who is still telling the tale of his nephew, that he was not doing it because it was cool. He wanted to support his family better because money was a little tight in their family. His sister was soon going to college and his aunt was getting old. She also worked hard for the family, but it was not good for her health at that age. Mingyu is certain that even as the lowest rank player, he could earn little more than as a miner and wanted to become one soon. But someone starts laughing on hearing his dreams. A rich brat in a costly suit is standing in the mine and laughing at Mingyu. He tells Mingyu that he was only garbage and could never become a player no matter how hard he tried. Mingyu gets angry upon hearing this, but Lao Fan stops him before he can say anything. The man in front of them was a member of the Shangjing Guild, the guild in charge of this dungeon. Lao Fan cannot afford for anyone on his team to pick a fight with the guild and obediently nods even though the rich brat insults both of them. He says that they would have to toil for the rest of their lives to afford an awakening stone, so it was better that they stuck with mining. He approaches Mingyu and teases him, saying that he could show the gap between their powers if he wanted it. But Lao Fan covers for Mingyu and apologizes for no reason. He says that none of his men were qualified to fight any one of their clients. The rich brat is disappointed as he wanted to have fun beating Mingyu, and he leaves telling them to get to work. Lao Fan is relieved that the incident was resolved without anything getting out of hand. He tells Mingyu that the rich kid they just met was Zhang Miao, a member of the Shangjin Guild. He was born to rich parents and they bought him a B-rank awakening stone. If Mingyu could not control his anger, that person could have killed him in name of self-defense. But as they are talking about this, the dungeon core that was levitating above its stand falls down and cracks. Unaware of the trouble, Lao Fan is still telling Mingyu to calm down and believe in his dreams. Mingyu tells him that he was alright when something falls on his head. Both of them look up and they find that the stones from the roof were falling. The dungeon starts to shake and Lao Fan realizes that it was going to collapse soon. He screams at everyone to run to the entrance as fast as possible and starts running away while holding Mingyu's arm. The other miners also run and huge stones start falling from the ceiling. Mingyu realizes that the portal that led to the outside world was getting smaller. The dungeon core must have gotten damaged. That was the only reason the dungeon was collapsing unnaturally. But then, a huge stone falls on Lao Fan and he is crushed under it. Mingyu screams as he sees him losing blood rapidly and tries to help him by moving the boulder. He is not strong enough to even make it budge and Lao Fan tells him to save his own life instead. But Mingyu is not ready to abandon him and tries hard. Zhang Miao is also returning to the gate and he looks at the foreman squished under the big rock. Even in such a terrible situation, he insults Lao Fan and says that the final moments of garbage people were unfolding before his eyes. Mingyu grabs his arm and requests him to save Lao Fan somehow. He was a player and he could have some ways to help him. But Zhang Miao pulls his hand away from Mingyu and tells him that he would not help people so below his own standard. He says that they were not even people. Why should he consider helping them? He is entering the portal when Mingyu gets angry and runs to punch him. But Zhang Miao smirks and says that he was waiting to show them the difference in their powers. He points his finger at Mingyu's forehead and releases an energy beam that throws him back. He is stopped when he hits the walls of the dungeon and Zhang Miao leaves, telling him to die. As he leaves, the portal to the outside also disappears and Mingyu can only shout at it to stop. Mingyu does not want to die and shouts for help, but there is no one to hear his voice. At his home, his sister Tao Zhai is watching the news and complaining that Mingyu was not back yet. Her mother scolds her because she did not call him her brother as she should. But she tells the girl that it was payday at work and he might be partying with his friends. Urgent news is shown on television and it tells about the accident at the dungeon managed by the Shangjing Guild. The Da Chuan team that was mining the guild suffered losses due to a dungeon collapse. She gets worried upon hearing the news and asks her mother the name of the company where Mingyu worked in. As her mother enters the room, Tao Zhai points at the news report about the collapsed dungeon. Mingyu worked in the Da Chuan mining team and both the mother and daughter get worried when they hear that some people had lost their lives in the accident. But the doorbell rings and the aunt goes to the door. She is relieved on finding that Mingyu had reached home even though he was injured. She cries as she hugs him and says that she was worried about him. Even his sister is getting emotional and we see a photo frame of their childhood. How could giant Mingyu return home alive even though the gates of the dungeon had closed? When he was trapped in the dungeon and praying that he wanted to live, a miracle happened. He was injured and bleeding, his consciousness was also weakening. But his will to live was strong and he tells himself that he didn't want to die. Just as he is speaking out his thoughts, his fingers touch the broken dungeon core that had rolled near him due to the shaking. As soon as the contact is made, the dungeon core acts as an awakening stone and Mingyu can see a screen in front of him. The screen had a message for him: Abyss system is activated. Mingyu does not have any time to think about the Abyss system as the screen tells him that he had only 30 seconds left to live. If he wanted to live, he had to become the king of the Abyss. If he chose to become the king of the Abyss, he would get to live. Mingyu does not have much choice in the matter and he decides to select yes as his answer. He did not care if he had to live as a king or a slave for the rest of his life. But he did not want it to end here. As soon as he presses the yes button, the system congratulates him and he feels his body glowing. After that, he was teleported right to his doorstep and was found by his family. Mingyu wakes up late in the morning and starts fiddling with the Abyss system. He did not remember anything after being teleported back home. He wonders if what had happened was some sort of magic, but the evidence points against it. Teleportation magic was not heard of and the screen he saw also did not seem to be made of magic. The screen tells him that he was at level 1 and gives him a task to gain all points and level up. Below the mission, he can see his stats: strength at 10, agility at 12, and mental spirit at 18. He also had 20 unassigned status points. Mingyu thinks that the system looks similar to the video games he played. It was easy to understand and he could control how he wanted to distribute his available points. And also the 3 stats showed on the screen corresponded to the 3 classes of warrior, ranger and mage. Mingyu realizes then that he was now a player. He is overjoyed on finding out that he had awakened due to the dungeon core. But he still does not know what the system means by awe points and how can he get them. His sister is at the door and coughs to get his attention. But he is still busy in his thoughts and realizes that his injuries were completely healed because of the system. She can no longer wait at the door and shouts at him while slamming open the door. Mingyu is startled and tells her that she should knock before entering anyone's room, especially a boy's room. But she tells him that if he was doing perverted things, he should do it with the room locked. But if he was all healed up, he should come down for breakfast. Mingyu asks her if she could not see the screen in front of him and she says that he must have hit his head yesterday and was still seeing things. Mingyu realizes that she could not see the screen. She tells him that her mother had gone to work and she was also going to go out with her friends. He would get ready and eat breakfast. But before going, she tells Mingyu that he shouldn't do such dangerous jobs anymore. She had taken a loan to pay for the university fee and would work part-time to cover her other expenses. Mingyu is surprised and asks her if she was worried about him. Tao Zhai is indeed worried about him but tells him that she was worried that if he died, she would not get money to spend. Mingyu is disheartened that she was still so cold to him. But the doorbell rings and Tao Zhai thinks that her friends are already there to get her. It was much earlier than the planned time and she goes to open the door. But the people at the door are not her friends. She is shocked on seeing 2 mean-looking people at her doorstep and asks them who they were. Although it is clear on seeing them that they are gangsters. The 2 men say that they were not bad people. It was so clear that they were some sort of thugs that even small kids could tell it right away. One of the men asks Tao Zhai if she was the daughter of Bao Xianyang. He shows her a receipt that tells about the debt he had taken from them. He had not paid anything in the last 3 years and the debt had tripled in that duration due to the interest. He says that children need to pay the debt of their parents and he was there to collect it. Tao Zhai clearly tells him that he was unfair in asking this of her. Her father had abandoned his family and they were also the victims. They could not provide them with the money and she asks the 2 men to go and find her father if they wanted it back. The gangster tells her that she was right and that she and her mothers were also victims. But her father was a gambler who had lost all his money and decided to ditch even his family. His daughter would have to pay the debt back any way she could. As he says that, the man grabs Tao Jai's arm and starts pulling her. She resists and he tells her that if she did not have money, they would use her to earn money. She screams and calls for help, but the other man slaps her and tells her to shut up. He tells his partner that the girl should just be dragged away. They didn't have to convince her. The first thug tells his partner to not hit the girl's face. It was important that she maintained her looks or she would not be valuable enough. He threatens Tao Jai that if she did not come with them peacefully, she would suffer more. But Mingyu comes out and confronts the thugs. He was still in the process of getting ready and came out with soap on his head. The two thugs start laughing at him and make fun of him. The man who hit Tao Jai is laughing, saying that he must have watched too many movies and now thinks that he was a protagonist of one. Mingyu rushes at him and punches him with his full strength. Everyone is shocked by the bold act, but it seems that his punch did no damage to the tough guy. He is angry at Mingyu and tells him that he made a mistake. He holds his arm as Mingyu tries to move away but cannot free himself from his grip. He gets intimidated and asks him to settle things down without violence. The thug is named Lao Huang and he kicks Mingyu very hard. Tao Jai is worried about him, but the thug laughs at him for trying to be brave when he was so weak. The thug Lao Huang was a boxer in underground boxing tournaments and it was not easy to defeat him. Lao Huang starts pulling Tao Jai by her hair and tells Mingyu that if he wanted his sister back, he should earn money and pay back his debt. If he failed to do so, they would force her sister into doing dirty work and he would never see her again. They taunt him that even though he may not see her again, she would be in a lot of erotic videos. Mingyu is really angry at the two gangsters and tells the Abyss system to put all his points into the strength attribute. His strength increases to 30 points and Mingyu gets up and tells the thugs to leave her sister with due respect. He shouts at them and says to let her go immediately. Lao Huang pushes Tao Jai onto the ground and gets ready to face Mingyu. He is planning to beat some sense into him as he was itching for violence. His partner tells him to hold his strength and not kill the boy. If that happened, they could face some problems with their boss. But Lao Huang is ready to play with the weak-looking boy and invites him to attack. Mingyu runs at him at his full speed and Tao Jai remembers a scene from her childhood. Some children were bullying her in the playground and she started crying. Because of that, Mingyu tried to fight all of them alone. He was outnumbered and got injured, but he hit another kid so hard with a bat that he started bleeding. The other kids got scared and ran away in fear, calling him a murderer. But Mingyu shouted at them that if they bullied his sister again, he would definitely kill them. After that, when she came to him and asked if he was hurt too badly, he told her that he was not feeling pain at all. He was confident that no one would tease or bully her again. She remembers this incident as Mingyu rushes to punch the thug. Lao Huang is underestimating him based on his previous punch and does not even put up a guard. He tells Mingyu that even though he was determined, there was nothing he could do with the weak punches. But when Mingyu's fist hits his face, he realizes that it was not a weak punch at all. Lao Huang falls to the ground in just one hit and cannot get back up. Tao Jai and the other thug are shocked on seeing this. While Mingyu marveled at how much he had grown due to the strength boost, the other thug is scared for his life. He thinks that Mingyu was acting to be weak before, but he was really a player. Mingyu receives a message from the system that he had received 10 awe points. He understands that he needed people to realize how awesome he was to earn awe points. The more awestruck he left them, the better. While he is thinking about this, he notices that the other thug was quietly running away. He catches him and is about to punch him when the thug falls to his knees and begs Mingyu for forgiveness. He says that he was just doing what his boss told him to do. He was not also associated with the lender and was only a hired mercenary. He shows Mingyu the receipt of the loans and tells him that even if he beat them, the loan shark would send more men after his family. Mingyu realizes that he was saying the truth. He asks the thugs who had hired him and where his office was situated. He planned to go there and pay back the loan in full so that his family was left alone. The thug tells him everything he knows. The loan shark was a man named Meng Fei. He says that since he had helped Mingyu, he should forgive him and let him go. But Mingyu is not going to let him leave without teaching him a lesson. He says that he dared to grab her sister's arm with his right hand and now he would lose it. The thug begs Mingyu to stop, but he stomps on his right hand and breaks his bones. The screen tells him that he had received 10 more awe points and had leveled up. He also received 2 assignable attribute points. Once he is back inside his room, Mingyu ponders more about the system and the awe points. It was one form of experience he needed to level up. But he is disappointed to find out that he only received 2 attribute points for leveling up. He also finds it foolish that he put all his 20 attribute points into strength alone. He could have managed to win even without that level of overwhelming strength. He would have saved some points if he realized that he was going to get only 2 of them from leveling up. But he decides to put the 2 points into his agility as his mental spirit was already quite high. But the more interesting thing is that he had completed the system mission and had been granted the reward. He redeems the reward and gets a new skill, his first. But the name of the skill is a mood killer. It was called Weakling's Aura Level 1 and it would make him look weaker to anyone who saw him. He is not happy about receiving such a crappy skill and lashes out at the system for giving it to him. He calls the system pitiful and says that he had hoped for some flashy move. His sister is also ready to go out with her friends to study and tells him that she was leaving. He tells her to be careful and return home early. But now, he had another job to do. He plans to go to meet the loan shark and settle things with him. At the office, the thug sent to kidnap Tao Zhai was getting scolded by Meng Fei, the loan shark. He cannot believe that the men he hired failed to collect the debt or the girl and got beaten by a kid instead. He also has a player with him who is either his friend or his bodyguard. Meng Fei demands to know what happened at the house of the borrower and the thug tells him everything. They found a boy who looked very weak and was easily beaten by Lao Huang at first. But when he got up after that hit, his power suddenly grew and he knocked him out with just one punch. Even his right hand was fractured by the kid. The boss is suspicious of his story. He asks the thug that wasn't his partner a boxer in the underground arena before joining this line of work. How could he be defeated so easily by a kid? The thug tells Meng Fei that the kid was definitely a player who was acting to be weak. Meng Fei finds this plausible and he asks his player friend Jay about it. Jay says that he cannot give a clear answer with just what he had heard. If he met the boy and fought him, he would be able to tell the truth. But even if the kid was awakened, it must have not been too long since that. Speak of the devil and he shall appear. Meng Yu comes to meet Meng Fei and an errand boy comes to announce his arrival. Meng Fei is really furious at the boy who had beaten his men and now dared to come to his place. He smiles thinking that he would pay back the boy for interfering with his work and asks the errand boy to call him in. Meng Fei turns his attention to the thug and tells him that he was one of the most useless men that served him. He tells him that his punishment would be decided later. Meng Yu comes to the office and he is acting like a timid and cowardly person. He hesitantly asks who was Boss Meng among the two gentlemen in the room. Meng Fei tells that he was the man he was looking for and asks Meng Yu how dare he hurt his men. Meng Yu acts like a foolish man and says that he lost his temper due to strong emotions and hurt the two respectable men by mistake. He asks Meng Fei to not take it as a sign of disrespect. Meng Fei is not certain if Meng Yu was acting to be a fool, but that was certainly the vibe he gave off. But if he had defeated two of his men easily, how could he be so weak? He decides to not ponder on it and asks Meng Yu why exactly he had come to see him. Meng Yu says that he was there to talk about the loan Mr. Bai had borrowed from him. He would like Boss Meng to be kind and extend the deadline. Meng Fei tells him that he would give him extra time to repay the loan on one condition. Meng Yu gets really happy on listening to this and thanks him. But his condition was that Meng Yu had to fight and defeat Jay. If he could do that, they would talk about extending the date. Otherwise, he would be forced to pay it immediately somehow. Meng Yu is shocked on hearing the condition, but will he accept it? Is he acting to be weak deliberately or is it due to his new skill Weakling's aura? How strong is the man called Jay and can Meng Yu beat him? Let us find out in the next video.